Today we've got a nice speaker from Reiman Gardens at Iowa State. And come to find, well, let me read a little bit about his background. He is currently the director of Reiman Gardens in Ames, Iowa. And he says it's a very populous area. Yeah, that is being sarcastic, by the way.
We have more students than we do permanent population.
Yeah. So he also, prior to that, he was garden director at the Allen Centennial Gardens in Madison, Wisconsin. And prior to that, he was at the Rotary Botanical Gardens in Janesville, Wisconsin. He's also worked at the Albrecht Botanical Gardens and the Chicago Botanic Gardens prior to that. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin in agricultural economics. And come to find out we have something in common. He went back for his master's at the University of Wisconsin. He was an older than average student like I was. So, yeah. So with that, if he has anything else to add, I'll let him add to that. But welcome Ed Lyon. Give him a good Aggie welcome.
I actually remember being at a party where there was a current student at the party, and we were all much older. He was the son of one of the folks that were coming, had come to the party. And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm a student right now too." And he says, "Oh, you're one of those guys we hate. You're that adult student that sits in front and answers all the questions." And I'm thinking, actually, I am sitting in front because I'm now at the age that I can't see the screen. So thank you, everybody. I've been here a day now. Gracious hosts. It's been wonderful seeing your campus, seeing the relatively new garden that you have. It's been a pleasure, and I want to thank everybody that's been involved with it. So first, the shirt. I am a horticulturist. I do have a master's in horticulture, although interestingly, that's not the route I took to become director. The route was through education. I'm equally passionate about both. But I am a horticulturist. I like color and I like flowers. But it also represents the fact that Iowa State is also the home to the Buck roses. Dr. Griffith Buck worked on a whole line of roses that were the early precursors to what are now the modern shrub roses. So that's something that both Iowa State University and the gardens are known for horticulturally. The gardens also has one of the few year-round butterfly houses. We fly butterflies every week of the year. And we have recently just sort of finished completion on a garden that we hope will be sort of the iconic garden that people will remember the gardens for as well. But I'm not going to go on a lot about the gardens themselves, but rather the topic here, which is how we've, we're 26 years old, and how we've partnered with the university with students and giving them different types of experiences. And I was talking to some of the graduate students over lunch. College and university gardens are very different in some ways, so much so that in our national organization, and I understand Casey talked to you in the last seminar, that we have our own community within APGA. And very often our donors, particularly in a small community like ours, our donors are mostly alumni, which is very different for other types of public gardens. We also have to justify our existence. We are a public garden attached to a college or university. Those types of institutions change administratively. You could have a president of the university that loves that you're part of the university, and then change over to a president that says, "Why do we have this? Let's not fund them," or whatever. So we kind of deal with some different issues. And so what most of us do is then, as we establish and grow our gardens, we want to make sure that we are including the students in everything we do, because that is the connection that the university looks to us for. If we're not producing that, then they have justifiable reason to maybe not fund us or something of that nature. I saw your garden. It's wonderful. 3 years old, and you already have more structure than we probably did at 3 years old. I'm going to be telling you of a lot of different things here that we've done, but I also want to give you a little bit of background, and so that you recognize it took us 26 years to get to the point that I'm going to tell you about today. So these are things to aspire to, but if we could do it, we haven't had any sort of special funding or anything. We've done this growth pretty much on our own. So it's something to look forward to as you develop your gardens. We are considered a department of ISU. One thing that's really interesting is where we are, and I have found out you're located in a non-traditional spot in the administrative as well. Most of the time, public gardens and colleges and universities are at least under the ag college, and many times under the Department of Horticulture. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't give you a lot of clout, doesn't give you a lot of, I mean, if somebody wants to roust with you, you don't have a lot of power. In fact, the garden that I ran at UW was under the horticulture department. I worry about its future. Right now, Conference Services is moving into a house on that property. I think eventually it will not be a public garden. I think Conference Services will swallow it up. So those are things that are concerns as well. I found out we were under the Office of Business and Finance, and that was actually a factor that helped me make the decision that I work at this garden, because obviously it is a much more powerful department. But it also it brings other things with it as well. We are also on the far edge of the university property. We sit, not only do we sit next to the football stadium, we share the parking lot. And I say share on my end. I'm pretty sure they don't look at it that way. It's their parking lot. So we have 6 to 7 Saturdays in the fall where if you want to come to the gardens, you're either going to have to walk or you're going to have to bike in, because there's absolutely no parking. We have tailgating right outside our main entrance. This is where partnerships really work, though. Because we have made an arrangement with them, and they're very generous to do so, because they certainly don't have to, where they compensate us a certain amount per game, and then we allow people in free with their football tickets. And again, that's much more to our advantage than theirs. But we also don't have a bus stop. Why am I telling you these things? Because one of the things that comes up very often in our university and college garden conferences is getting students to the garden. And you'll hear from all kinds of different gardens that are off-site from the university and how to get the students out there. And we did have one sort of a conference session talking about that. Well, many of us that are still attached to the university still have that. So we don't have a bus stop. We're on the edge of the property. We're not on central campus. So one of the problems that most of these public gardens have is, how do you make yourself available to the students in the first place? Very fortunate that you're building it where you are, because hopefully you won't have that same kind of difficulty. We are, in the grand scheme of things, I consider us relatively young, 26 years old this year. We're what I consider a mid-sized garden, 17 acres. $3 million budget is what we're operating on right now. We have an interesting structure of where our funding comes from. 40% comes from the university. We are one of those universities going through cuts. So obviously we have to look at not relying completely on that. So 40% of our budget is earned, and then 20% is from donor endowment, things of that nature. So a lot of what we're trying to do is make sure that we are raising the necessary funding as those legislative funds disappear. So our staff, I think, is relatively heavy for a garden our size. I do tend to listen to my staff and they say, we need more help, we need more help. But that's also where a large part of that budget's going to as well. We've grown even since I've been there. I've been there nearly 7 years now. So we have our office entomology and horticulture staff currently is 19 full-time and 2 part-time people with 1 merit. That's our custodial. We have around 20 part-time front desk and gift shop associates. Some gardens, those are volunteer positions, ours are paid positions. And we've talked about the size of the community, 31,000. And one of the things that I've been using in the community to get more support is to ask our community, you find another community out there of that size that has a public garden of this nature, you're not going to find it. And it's because of Iowa State and our donors that a community this small has a garden like this. Des Moines is the largest city near us. There aren't very many large cities in Iowa to begin with. They're roughly 35 miles away, but they have all of their own cultural events that they want to donate to. So tapping into that for fundraising is still going to be down the road. We have to have reasons for them to want to be participating up in Ames. So let's talk about our interactions with students and things that we've done, partnerships. And it's interesting because I wrote down, when I was asked to do this, I wrote down all the things I could think of. I sent it out to staff. I said, add to the list. It absolutely amazed me. I didn't even realize we had gotten to the point where we're doing as much student involvement as we are. In fact, I'm now going to take this. I've joined with 2 other universities, and hopefully we've proposed this as a session in our national meeting. And I'm going to make sure that my boss and his boss and the president get this information as well, because you want to keep that message out. How much, because they don't know. And we don't even know the true extent. We have classes come through all the time that they're welcome to come and they don't have to tell us. So we don't even know the extent that we're being used. But here's some of the most obvious and basic things you start to do with students. We have free admission to all students. They just show their ID. We are admission based. So we do have an paid admission to get in. We obviously are a classroom to various departments. In fact, our rooms are on the official list of classrooms. Fortunately, most of the time they don't notice that because we are renting them out as well. We've always have been a site for student activities. The forestry students sell Christmas trees in one of our lots, horticulture plant sales. We are also a site for, actually Iowa State has a really big design college. And so we've been the site for their fashion shows. We just had this year the Entomology Insect Horror Film Festival. For different projects like that, we offer the site for them to do that. We do free staff-led tours for any classes, regardless of what the program might be, and any student organizations and learning communities. Right now, I guess the journalism department is putting out all kinds of assignments because we're getting all kinds of emails. We'd love to come and interview you. So a lot of our time may be spent helping those students with projects. We've also have student projects that staff directs. We are the actual instructors. Some examples there are the biomimicry, birdhouse design, certainly landscape architecture projects. We like that because in general, that tends to be something that we are building and improving or restoring. So that's wonderful, but it also gives them actual hands-on experience. Annual student art show for drawing class, and then we discount or make free some of the same educational programs that we do for our adult programming. And these are all things that are fairly basic to most gardens, established gardens on university settings. And again, I want to say, keep in mind, it's taken us 26 years to get to this point, but we employ a large number of students. So we have students as part-time employees. It gets then confusing because we also have interns, and how do you delineate the roles and relationships there? We hire event associates. We do a lot of events, a lot of rentals, and these are students that are probably in the event management program. So that's paid experience for them. We also are now even delving into high school students, something I think a lot of groups are looking at. And then, believe it or not, we even have part-time custodial students. So part of our labor force, and that again, of course, students have always been utilized as labor. A good share of our labor force are students, so we're providing them with jobs as well. And then, of course, we have internships, and the internship program has evolved over time to the point where now we have 9 to 10 internships. One of the things I really appreciated when I took the job is we don't just provide internships for horticulture, for gardening, which is very often the case. Again, associated with a university, we want to make sure we're giving experience in all different fields. So we have a gift shop. So we have a retail gift shop intern. We have 1 to 2 interns for education. Obviously, we have to have education interns. We have event interns, entomology. Again, for the we have the butterfly house actually has a USDA regulated laboratory, so they get experience working in a USDA regulated laboratory as undergraduates. New this year, my volunteer coordinator and I decided volunteerism is so important in public gardens, but you do not very often find opportunities for students to have internships in it. So we developed, and we have this fall a volunteer intern, and then next spring, I think I'm going to be putting on a membership intern. These are all very important roles to public gardens, and we feel that it's important to provide these opportunities for students. Or when we go, and right now I've hired recently 4 different positions, finding that kind of talent in the field isn't necessarily that easy. So if we're not helping those students get that kind of experience, then we're just creating our own issues. So the interns differentiates them from just paid part-time students. They have an actual program that's written up that they follow. They do Wednesday morning sessions. Generally, the speakers that they have will be different people from the different departments to talk about what each of those departments do. I go in and I talk to them about what a director does. I talk to them about careers in public gardens. We take them on field trips. The pictures there, I took them on an overnight to Minneapolis this year. So you see them out amazed in the fields of Bailey Nurseries, Minnesota Landscape Arboretum. But then we also take them to the Walker Art Museum, because you want to make sure, your retail person's got to see the gift shops, but we provide those opportunities for them. They have to do a specific leadership project. We do what we call Nature at Noon. So every third Thursday, we have, it's basically, bring in a lunch. We have speakers. They do their talk at the end of August, presenting the programs, leadership project that they did that year, what their experience was like. It is our heavily attended Nature at Noon, because everybody loves to see what those interns have been doing, and it's really fascinating. So they have an actual program that is set up that they follow, and then when they leave and they start writing resumes, they can say that they had an internship at Reiman Gardens. We use students as researchers. There's a lot of stuff that when we decide that we're going to do something, that takes that time to put into the research that we as staff just don't have the time to do. They are a tremendous resource, and you're the generation that understands all the technology and advancements that we're still struggling, trying to catch up with. So just not, and I tell people it's not just the knowledge and the ability that they bring to do this researching, but they're also bringing some skills and and some things from the department itself. I have worked on the whole having a bus stop, made no progress. Oh yes, if you want one, it's going to be 80,000, and you know, there was all these blockages. My education intern heard about that this year. He decided to take it on as a project. Well, he went a different route. He went equity, diversity, and inclusion. He is got all kinds of departments on campus realizing it's not so much just an issue of us wanting a bus stop. It's making us accessible to all the students. He's making progress I never would have made. And I might get that bus stop without paying the $80,000. They've helped us research for grants. That's an enormous process. Just taking the time to research what grants are available. Today, just searching through takes a lot of time. They help us conduct surveys. Then we involve them in future events and things that we're doing as well. So we're utilizing their skill and their expertise added on to us. We have enormous, I should have asked my volunteer coordinator when I left, what number are we up to now with students as volunteers? Probably exceeds our adults. And most of the time it might be a one-time type of volunteerism as opposed to maybe some of the adults that are coming in on a regular basis. But boy, does it add up. And I'll show you some events that we've done where it's made a significant difference. But again, volunteering, back when I was in college, it wasn't that we didn't want to volunteer. It's just, it wasn't even something that we thought about. Now classes are actually, and I'm sure it's probably true here, they're requiring students to do a certain amount of volunteer service. So we're providing them with that opportunity, and then they're providing us with tremendous assistance out of that. So this is one place where we've really been able to utilize them. We just finished planting 60,000 tulips in the context of some gardens. That's not that much. For us, 60,000 is a lot to put in the ground. You'll notice, guess who a lot of the people putting those bulbs in? A lot of our student groups, fraternities, sororities, they're all looking for projects, volunteer projects they can do. They love coming out and doing something in the open air and in the garden. We started last year one of the big major walkthrough holiday light shows, and they've been jumping on board and assisting, helping, because there's tremendous amounts of setting up for that as well. Plus, they've also been volunteer helping to staff that event as well. A 14-night light show that takes all of us as staff to have the student participation as well helps us out tremendously. We utilize them as parts of those events. This is actually from this year's, we do a 3-night Halloween event where, and I'll show you this, where we hand carve 1,000 jack-o'-lanterns. And during that event, as part of it, these groups all came in and entertained. So it gave them a venue to entertain as well. I love the Scum Club. I had to look that up to see why. I'm thinking, well, that's very college, but I'm not sure what it means. And all of these groups came in and they added to the value of the entertainment of our visitors. I don't have a picture of him. We had a magician in our main room, and that room was packed throughout the whole event. So this is probably the most successful student volunteer project. I've mentioned this. This is our Spirits in the Garden. It started out as your traditional come dressed in Halloween garb, and you know, we'd have different activities and entertainment and candy. But then my entomologist, he's just a big kid, there's no way around it. He went someplace where they were doing, I don't know, it was like 500 hand-carved jack-o'-lanterns. He came back, he says, we need to do this, and we're gonna do 1,000. And of course, we're all like, you know, there's no way. There's no way we can pull something like that off. We just finished our 5th year, sold out. We had people upset because they could not get tickets. That's where we all wanna get with our events, is to get to that stage. There is absolutely no way in the world that we can hand carve by stencil 1,000 jack-o'-lanterns in 3 days without hundreds of volunteers. Guess where they're coming from? They're come most, and we do have families come, and there are some organizations, but it's primarily college students that are coming in and doing that. We are now, they enjoy it so much now in advance, in about August, we'll have some of these clubs and groups that will contact us. Are you doing that this year? Make sure we're on the list. We actually had more students volunteer this year than we needed. So again, arriving at that. And again, the reason that event is so successful, is making its money, there's no way we could do it without that participation. And they love it. They just love coming in and cutting them up. With technology, again, most of us on staff are not technology gurus, but there are so many students and departments on campus that are. We have actually had students develop apps that are being used nationally right now. Our butterfly, the Iowa Butterfly Survey Network, students helped us create that program. And actually now that program has expanded out and is the basis for programs all across the country. So these students can now go out and say that they built a database of this nature. We're currently struggling with a really decent ticket system. And we have a department on campus right now where the students are developing it for us, and it probably will come out better than anything we can purchase at this point. So we utilize that expertise in the departments. This is something that I'm really proud that we do. In fact, we are only one of 2 public gardens that are part of Portals to the Public. It's mostly museums, nature centers. Portals of the Public, as it's described here, is a collaboration of museums and science centers that work to connect scientists to public audiences. Well, my director of education got interested in it, and she says, we have scientists, we have researchers, you folks out there, you grad students. How can we develop this program? So she and my assistant curator to the Butterfly Wing, they went out, they went through the program, they brought it back. The idea is how do scientists present to the public in a way that the public understands it? It's not the science jargon that someone in the public can't understand. And so how are we going to develop that? So what we did is we started out, the text is blocked on there for you too, isn't it? I apologize about that. But anyways, we started out, we reached out to research students on campus. We told them that we were going to do this. We set it up so that they could come and practice. And I think we had six students the first year. And then what we did is we had them set up. We came around the staff. We asked them the questions. We evaluated. We gave that back to them so they knew how, if it worked, that they were presenting in a way that we could understand it. The program has, I think that's the next slide. Yeah, that's where, we started with barely any students at all. It's now advanced to the point where we have a waiting list to be on that program. And now we've advanced to the point where we're developing a train the trainer. So departments on campus can do that on their own as well, for a fee, of course. But it's been very, very successful, and we're very proud to be part of that. And you can see here, it's a method for these students to start presenting what their research is and learning how to do that with a public audience versus a scientific audience. We're also a site for projects. We think this is really important as well. This is a college of, I think it was the engineering, I think maybe engineering. It was a prototype car. So who's going to see this when it sits in their department? So we said, bring it on out. And it got so much attention. It got us some media coverage as well. So it's great to be a site for those projects. This is one right after I had started the position. My youth and family program coordinator was a spousal accommodation. Iowa State has that. Her husband got a job in the design school, so she needed a job, and she had been the director of education at Daniel Stowe. So this all happened since her husband ran this class. she invited us to all go to this open house where they were demonstrating. The idea was 5 different teams had to build something that when it came together, it fit together. So we went and I thought, this is amazing. I just love the work that they did. And I said to the students, I said, now what? What happens? Oh, and they said, well, it's been on display for 2 weeks. It comes down. And I'm like, well, who's seen it? Well, our families. I'm like, this is awesome work. More than your families should see this. So I talked to Nick and I said, can we get it moved to the gardens? This is amazing. People should see it. So we did. They took it down, they took it out, and they moved it into the gardens. And it was just popular as all get out. So now they're getting their work recognized. It's not just a few limited people in that department and their families that see it. Unfortunately, because we didn't pre-plan this, that was not treated wood, so it only lasted a year. But again, for a year, their project was recognized. So we built on that. We thought, what about if we go to them in advance and then make it a project that fits in with our annual theme and our exhibit? So that's exactly what we did. We went back to that class. It was an advanced LA class. And again, I think 72 students, they spend 2 semesters in this class. It's very advanced. And we said, we want you to design something that will fit in with our theme that year. And so what we did is we were the clients and they had to come up with, and they've divided into 5 teams. Each team developed something. We dressed very nicely. We went, they dressed very nicely. They presented to us just like you'd have to do in the real world. We told them what we liked about things. They changed things. We came back. It was quite a process. So and we gave them a budget. They had to follow that budget. They researched. It's amazing the research they put into the products of it. But by the way, we had narrowed it down. This was the final product. They came out, they built it. They did the whole experience just like they would in real life. They had to follow a budget. They had clients telling them what they liked and didn't like. It was, I think, as much fun for us as it was for them as well. So we got this really cool thing in the garden that actually, because we knew that we were doing this, this was actually done in a product that lasted 2 years out in the garden. And it was an amazing project. You see them with the netting there. They actually hand wove that. I mean, there was so much that they put into this project. The public loved it. There were families that you knew that were using it for those 2 years because you'd see them leave our main entrance and they hightailed immediately that direction, and we knew we were heading to it. So it provided something for our audience, but it also provided something for the class too. Now, in that case, keep in mind, I said we provided them with a budget. So we were providing that class with some actual money to do it as well. We produced an exhibit that traveled nationally from 2012 until the end of 2020. It was called Nature Connects, Art with Lego Bricks. We worked with an artist. It is probably one of the more successful exhibits in public garden history. Unfortunately, we worked with an artist who created some legal issues, stole the trademark. Most people have no idea it's Reiman Gardens that produced that. They think it's Sean Kenny, the artist. So we decided we want to do another one. And we said, no way are we going to let that out of our control again. We have to make this completely ISU and not have that happen. So we said, hey, guess what we're going to do? We're going to go back to students. So we went back. We actually talked to, we have a lecturer on campus, and he sort of does some joint things with both engineering and design. We talked to him. He has sort of his own work that he does as well. We pulled together students from both departments. Once again, we told them what a budget was. We told them we wanted to create an exhibit that represented large versions of recognizable games, but then those versions had to have some ecological context. So if you notice the chess set that was created, that's the food web. The king and queen are a red-tailed hawk and a fox, and it goes all the way down to the pawns being the grasses and the flowers. That actually was an addition, the Rubik's Cube, but that's what all the pieces were. We had some idea of what we wanted to look like, but we went through session after session of the students brainstorming how these things would work. Not only did they do that, but once we decided which ones we were going to create, they also helped us outsource the fabrication. Some of the fabrication was even on campus. One of the things that we learned is there's lots of companies out there that like to send the most state-of-the-art fabrication equipment to colleges because they want those students using that when they leave college. So we found out we had resources to fabricate things that we never even knew right on campus. And let me tell you, you start fabricating things like this, it costs us $350,000 to do the whole thing. And we saved tremendous money by using the department. So you also have to think about, not only are you getting the student ingenuity, but you're getting departmental resources as well. They were paid for this, and they should be. But these students now can put on our resume, we created and helped fabricate an exhibit that is traveling nationally across the country. So that's a pretty cool thing to be able to put on your resume, I think. It was just a fun process. I mean, and we learned so much about fabrication from them. And it was the same kind of thing. We'd go, they would say, okay, this is how we think this is going to work. Again, just a great project and great interaction. And it's gone over very well. The other thing that this does, guess what our major donor loves, Roy Reiman loves? He loves students, and he loves, and this is true of donors. One of the reasons that you want to be interacting and doing things for students is because if you start trying to raise money, nothing will raise it faster than saying students are involved somehow. Alumni love what you're doing for students. So that also made a great connection too. So these are some of the pieces that were produced out of that. And I think if these students take this and show a portfolio, they're probably going to get the job that they're looking for. It was pretty amazing. And this is what I was inferring before. Students are an important part of our fundraising. I don't do any events that donors and members come to that students aren't present at. They need to be. This is what the university is about. So I hope that I can get them on the program to speak. This is this year's education intern, Logan. From left to right, there's our president. There's Roy and Bobby Reiman, who invested $1.7 million into this project. And then Larissa on the other end, who's head of the foundation, and Logan. Do not have an event like that where you've got all the dignitaries and you don't have a student present. And guess who impressed Roy and Bobby the most and who they talked to the most? It was Logan. Because your donors have such a strong interest in what you're doing for students. We use ourselves as case studies for classes. These are just some of the examples. We had second-year architects, students studying the glass houses that we have. We have Hort floral design class. That's during one of the change out we do for our conservatory. Hort and LA labs for hand-on projects such as building walls, setting pavers. Again, as I said, having a LA is wonderful. It gives them actual experience. Horticultural plant classes on, all the classes come out for their quizzes and their plant materials that we're supplying. We do pruning labs. All of these are just other things that we do for classes. Also, we provide opportunities for students to earn money or earn recognition. The turf club, we pay them to come out and take care of all of our turf versus professionals, because that provides them money to go on their trips and competitions. We do a big major plant sale, and you'll see we have 3 different departments student departments that join us. One does the hanging baskets, one does vegetables, and one does native plants. So, and then we have master gardeners doing something and we do something, but we don't do what the students are doing. Last year, I know the Hort Club raised $10,000 out of their participation. And again, that helps them be able to go to the different types of national functions that they want to. As I mentioned before, Forestry Club uses our site to sell Christmas trees. And I love this. We had one of our students did botanical illustrations. I said we are the home of Buck roses. Isn't that spectacular? So we took 2 of our illustrations. We took it to one of our vendors for the gift shop. They imprinted it on like kitchen towels and t-shirts and things, big time sellers. So she now has that on her resume. And we all just think it's so impressive. We, as I said, we've been doing a little bit now with high school students, but another group of students that we've utilized twice recently, we've used AmeriCorps. And that's part of their mission and their goal, and they need places to provide them with opportunities as well. So they've done another number of projects for us. We've experimented with the porous paving. When we looked at doing the area we wanted to experiment with it, it looked like it was going to cost about $30,000 using AmeriCorps. And there's expenses involved in housing and such with AmeriCorps, but they saved us probably $15,000 in that project. Plus, it gave them, once again, a project and the experience that they're looking for. Tremendous. I worked very closely with the team 1 year and just great interactions and the type of work that they do. So what does it take to do these types of things? Because you just don't do it. You have to have commitment from your staff. And I'm proud that I have that. This is something that they all had commitment to even before I started. But if all of your staff aren't committed to these efforts, they're not going to succeed the way that they are. You've got to have commitment from upper administration. Sometimes some of the funding needs to come from there. And some of these things might involve things like legal and risk management and all those fun things we deal with in universities. So you've got to have the support coming from your administration. You need funding for some of the ventures. So you develop budgets like we did for a couple of the projects we told you about. Get donors involved to get some of that funding. And some of the source has come from that. Participating organizations like AmeriCorps, groups of that nature. Look into grants, sponsorships, because again, if it has something to do with students and giving them experience, many of your granting sources, this is something that they like. You also have to lose the perception. So many gardens start out with the whole idea of using students as cheap labor. And you have to get that completely out of your mind. You need to treat them with the same respect and treat them the same way that you would if they were taking a job. We've fired students. We've given performance reviews to students. We have every expectation that they are going to be up and in the garden at 6:30 in the morning if that's what their job description says. So we do everything that an employer would do because we don't want them to enter the real world and then all of a sudden realize, oh, geez, you can't, not get up and be on time and such. So the whole idea of them just being labor, that has to go out immediately. You also have to have the ability to provide proper supervision. And again, just taking on a bunch of students and then you don't have the staff that can actually supervise them, things get lost in the mix. They don't get a good experience. And the end result that you're hoping for doesn't end up happening either. And this, I think, is a really big one. In some cases, you have to have the interest and motivation to make teaching moments. I did have a couple of years ago, 2 interns that were not happy with their internships. They were horticulture internships. I understand that the staff that they were working under were very busy, but the students were asking questions. They wanted to learn plant materials. That's why they were taking it. They were kind of getting, a quick answer and I'm off doing something. You have to teach and train your staff that you need to also have those teaching moments. That's why they're there. Make them feel that when they're answering the questions, that they are getting the answers and the learning experiences they want out of it. And then for the more advanced ventures, you really need to think things out very carefully in advance. Create maybe it's manuals of how this will work. We definitely did that with AmeriCorps. We didn't want anything slipping through. You want training materials, just asking students to just jump in and learn on the go. That's very difficult. Have training materials in advance. One of the things that COVID has taught us, we can do a lot of stuff recorded. And we're now using a lot of recorded training, which really helps a lot in those times. And have protocols, procedures set up. Make sure the things you're doing have very clear expectations. It's stuff that the student, and especially when you're going into partnerships that are business-like, where you're creating something like a traveling exhibit. We made sure right from the start we were putting everything down on paper, what expectations were, what the end result was that was wanted. So we went into it very clear, very focused. I hear all the time different people in universities say, oh, well, we put students on this project because we thought, they'd have the expertise to do it. Well, at the end of the semester, it was completely useless. Well, I think most of the time when that happens is because you didn't start out with this type of clear expectation, what the outcome was to be. How do we help you get to that point? And I think that's where so many of the failures come from. And I'm not saying we've done everything perfect. We haven't. Like I said, this has been 26 years to get to this point. But it's also, you have some years ahead of you where I hope this is inspiration to work toward and some ideas of how you can make more opportunities for students and internships and paid work. So I think as University Gardens, we have a responsibility to our students, and we have a responsibility to the university itself to make sure that we are fitting into that criteria, that we're there about education and excellence and helping our students for future careers. So that is my spiel. That's pretty good for me. I usually tend to be rather long-winded. Questions? Okay.
Real early in your talk, you mentioned rentals. I was wondering what you rent. Do you rent plants, a container?
Oh, no, the question is when I reference rentals, what does that mean? Is it plants, containers? I'm speaking about facility rentals. So we do weddings, we rent out space. Actually, one of our largest end users are university departments. We have one house on the property. It was created because all the gardens around it are landscape sized to a homeowner, so they can have an idea. So that house gets a lot of rental for retreats, things of that nature. So when I'm referring to rentals, it's more using the space and renting out that way. But again, this is a clientele, particularly when you start talking about weddings, that it's all about customer service. It's all about making sure things run well. And for students to go into a job and discover it's not the easiest job. I've done that myself. So we're giving them experience so that they can experience that and learn what that type of thing is before they do actually enter a real world.
You mentioned that 40% of your budget are creative money. Was it that way from the beginning, or did that transition into that?
The question is currently we're about 40% of our budget is appropriated through the university and the legislator. Has it always been that way? It was more when the garden started. Obviously, when the garden started, we weren't earning the kind of revenue that we are now. Now, obviously, that means when we start generating revenue and we look like we're making more money, that's always an indication for the university to say, well, you know, maybe it won't hurt to cut you some. But overall, I would have to say the university has been very supportive of the gardens, and any cuts that we're seeing, we're not seeing them. It's across the university. I'm sure you folks all know that as well. So I don't mean to say they're targeting us on those cuts. They aren't. We're taking the same cuts that everybody else is. We've been very fortunate. As far as I know, in the most recent presidents we've had, they understand what a public garden is. They appreciate it. But you know, at any given time, that can change. And you all know that. Yes. The question is what are the students doing in the picture? That is in the USDA butterfly lab. So when we get weekly shipments of cocoons and chrysalids, they come in loose. And so students and volunteers, anybody that has approval to be in that lab, what they're doing is they're taking those loose chrysalids and cocoons and they're gluing them. They will actually go into a case where they hang and hatch out. There's a window, you probably have all seen these types of things, where the public can see them once they've been hung up. And then once they hatch, then they're taken up. So that's what they're doing. Every single week of the year, we have to glue chrysalids and cocoons. Yes.
So it's very early on that there is a mission always had that. What is that?
And the question is, have we always charged an admission? And this is a huge issue with public gardens, in particular ones that start out free. Because if you start out free, and you build up to a time when you know you need to charge admissions or there's a reason to do that, there's a whole thing where, you know, then you've got to teach your public that we are now charging an admission, but there is a value to that. Some gardens don't have that opportunity. I know there are some gardens where when they are, they might have a primary donor, or the endowment might say, you may never charge admission. There was somebody just on the APGA site today saying, we're starting a public garden. We have funding from, I think, the city. We have one of those 99-year leases, but we can never charge admission. How do the rest of you raise money? So those can be challenging. It's interesting. One of the gardens I had worked at, the Rotary Botanical Gardens in Janesville, we did go from a free garden at about 20 years old with a community that was used to it being free. We knew we had to start charging admission. What we were providing was costing that much more money. What you have to do is you have to get your public to understand the value that they're getting out of it. I'm not really in favor of free admission, even if it's $2, because there's a whole thing about value perception, and your gardens are treated differently, believe it or not, if you're charging an admission, because there is this perceived value. I decided when I started there, came in with this big idea. We were doing one or two, probably 2 or 3 free days, National Public Garden Day, things of that nature. I said, we have to make us available to folks who might not otherwise be able to come because of the economics or whatever the case might be. We are going to do 1 free day a month. And donors love that. You know, you're providing that opportunity. We quit it after a year. It did not bring in the groups that I was hoping for. That wasn't their challenge. So we've since addressed that. We now do cards you can check out of the library, and then our food assistance program, which is called SNAP. If you have a SNAP card, you can get in free. That helped. What it did do is it hurt memberships because all of a sudden here's these mothers that were bringing in young children, and they're like, well, now once a month I can get in free. Why am I paying a membership? Our memberships dropped. The people that were coming in were a different audience. We had damage like you couldn't believe because, again, they didn't pay admission. They didn't see that value. And I've talked to other gardens that have went through the very same thing and had the same reactions. So when I was at Rotary Botanical Gardens and we decided to go to charged admission, I talked to a lot of other gardens that had gone through that. And what I got out of that is every one of those, well, the gardens I talk to anyway, they'll say your audience is going to balk and they're going to complain for a year. And after that year, they forget you were ever free. That's not entirely true. There are always those that are like, well, you were free. But the complaints stop after about a year. And what we do is we try to emphasize to the community what you're buying with your admission. We're doing world-class traveling exhibits that would never be in this community of 31,000 if we weren't bringing it in. We're providing you with a beautiful space that requires maintenance, it requires staff. You do have to get across in gentle ways what they're getting for that. And we don't currently have any issues with that. Over the last 3 years, we bumped it $1 a year. We went from $9 for an adult we're up to $11 right now. We go out in the spring in April when we have our hours advance. We changed it on the sign. We don't announce that we did it. Nobody even really notices. So we've had no complaints. The comment was we can still cater to that market that disrespects the garden by having a specific space. I think I'd worry a little bit that you're identifying people for that and saying you go here. Well, those aren't the people disrespecting. No, it's an audience that treats free differently than if they pay for it. They wouldn't have come to the garden if they had to pay to get it. For example, the year that we did this, our exhibit was Washed Ashore, an amazing exhibit. The artist pulls stuff out of the ocean. She creates these amazing sculptures of marine creatures. It was a free day. And here we had the big puffer penguin in the lobby and 2 little kids just wailing away, kicking this thing. And I said, that's actually a piece of art. Would you not kick it? And the mother got so mad at me, she starts wailing in and kicking it. There is, and I don't know how to say this nicely, there is a segment of the population that if they don't see value in things, they don't treat things well. We've never seen so many people with kids climbing trees. We never saw so many kids in the water features. It's because we're being then perceived, if we're free, we're being perceived as a park. And so we want people to come in and perceive right from the start that there's a difference between what a public garden is and what a park is. Although some of the things they were doing in the garden, I would hope they wouldn't even do in a park. But it's amazing, the behavioral changes. Green Bay Botanic Garden would do 1 day a week. They said, free day a week. They said the horticulture staff would spend the very next day doing nothing but repairing beds. So there is a mentality and an attitude at that free level. And it's not everybody, obviously. I think most people appreciated it, but it does increase the disrespecting of what your site is.
You have memberships and what functions do the members get at
Yes, not only do we have a membership program, but that's what I was doing today on my Zoom call. We just interviewed 4 candidates for that position. We're about 3,000 households right now. The membership chairperson that I've had for the last 5 years that just recently left, did an amazing job building the program. Membership comes with things. One of the things we try to emphasize is we're part of the AHS, our reciprocal agreement program. So you can go to over 300 gardens now, and it could be free admission, discounts on gift shops. So we have that program. There are 4 member-only events. So especially if we do something like open that year's exhibit, that artist or whoever's coming in from the exhibit will do a program the evening before that only members can come to. They get discounts on programs, activities, educational things of that nature. They have their own newsletters, so they know about things in advance. They might be allowed to buy tickets earlier than others. One of the things we're going through now in a membership program, then you have another evolutionary process that you have to go through. You've provided all of these benefits. Well, now we're doing these 2 big events I told you about, the Spirits, the 1,000 Jack-o'-lanterns, and the Holiday Light Show. We don't want members to come in for free for that. These are income generating things. And so you then have to get to the point where you're explaining to the members, membership isn't going to be free for absolutely everything you do. I think we've done a good job. We've had very little complaints. Well, what do you mean? I have a membership. Why am I not getting in free? Within your memberships, you have 2 different groups. You have the members who are members mostly because they are supporting you. And they know that that money that they're donating is as much for support as it is for anything they're getting back. But you'll also have a certain percentage of the members who have joined for some other reason. Maybe we have an exhibit that year, and by buying a membership, they're going to come multiple times and it will be cheaper. So the whole retention thing, how do you retain those folks that might have bought it for one reason that won't replicate the next year? How do you keep them part of the membership? It's a position that takes the right person to keep thinking about how do we retain as much as how much do we grow. And I hope they understood it, because I don't think I repeated the question.
So you have people coming in, appreciating the gardens and art and things like that. How many people come to actually learn something about the plants, and to what extent do you label the plants and actually have learning opportunities for people that visit your garden?
And the question, yes. Yep. The question is how do we, and basically what you're talking about is garden interpretation. How many people are coming to actually learn about the plants? So how many people is it about gardening and horticulture? I think that group is as far less today than it probably was in the past. The audience that was truly into gardening is my age group. There was my age group, we all grew up with some connection, probably not all, but most of us grew up with some connection to gardening. Maybe it was mom or grandma that had a vegetable garden. We might have helped in that vegetable garden. I grew up on a farm. I learned all about trees and things from my dad and how those were used. Then when we had children, those children were, okay, so we didn't start that until we were like in our 40s. We were, getting a good hold on the mortgage of the house. We had those kinds of memories. We started to have a little bit more time. We started gardening. The generation that followed had left the house before we really got interested in that. And there are garden trends that, that will show you this. So that next generation that came didn't have that same direct connection. And that generation, it was about the family and quality time spent with the family. So that generation really wasn't that interested in spending any amount of time gardening. And in fact, we called it the do-it-yourself generation, because boy, that's when landscaping companies and lawn care companies, they flourished because they wanted the time with the family, not to be out in it. We're starting to see a movement back, more interest in gardening. I hope that does continue. But so there's been these sort of ebbs and flows. We do label plants. We are a garden that we consider ourselves educational on the plant materials. There are gardens that's not the focus. My favorite garden in the whole country is Chanticleer. They're about being a pleasure garden. It's all about being creativity. So when you establish a garden, you want to really decide, what is our mission? What is it that we want to do, what we want to provide? I changed, they were halfway through a new master plan when I came into the position. Fortunately, they said, hey, we can't finish this before we hire somebody. They won't have had any involvement. The first thing I did is took one of the areas that was going to be the Hanging Towers of Babylon. It's a hillside we have that's all terraced. I said, we can't do that. Things are changing. It has to be more about sustainability initiatives and teaching people a whole different thing than we've taught before. It's now one of very few, it's a whole new style of gardening called gravel gardening that came out of Germany. So we changed the whole focus of that. But again, because that's our mission, we want to help teach people not only about plant materials and gardening in general, but the movement now has to come more also with lifestyle. How do we live? How do we do those types of things? Not just, hey, here's a plant with a label that tells you it's Quercus macrocarpa, that kind of a thing. And it will continue to change. I think we're seeing gardens now with purpose for healing, relaxation, therapy, social events. So there's a lot of things I think we'll be seeing in the next 10 years. We'll be seeing a lot of transitions in what we are providing as public gardens to our public. But again, you're young. You can start making those decisions now. This is what we ultimately want to be. That doesn't mean you can't make changes down the line, but it's good to have a very clear vision because it's highly unlikely you can be everything to everybody. And so you want to look at your audience, see what you can provide to that audience that might not be getting provided elsewhere. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, it seems like all the examples of poor behavior was involve kids. Believe me, no, it does not have to involve children. In fact, adults in many cases can be far worse than children. And I will say, and most of the times that I see the children misbehaving, it's because the adult isn't making any correction to the situation. I don't know if I should say this or not, but because I don't want to sound like my dad or grandpa, but I'm getting to that age. The current parent today is much more permissive. And I understand that they want the kids to explore on their own, and there's things that they give them great leeway to do, but they're not also learning how to behave in these spaces. They're not making the distinction to those kids that they're going to need later on in life, saying, this is how you behave in a park. This is how you behave in a museum. And I'll tell you almost every time, and I try to do it as nicely as I can. I'll say to the parent, because they're the ones that are responsible for that behavior, I'll say, this is just a wonderful way that you can teach your children the difference between a park and a public garden. They will literally yell at me. Heaven help if you say something that looks at all like you're correcting their parental. And so, no, it's actually, we just opened up this new Sycamore Falls garden, and it's got a beautiful, wide flowing stream. And we know kids are going to want to get into it. Well, who was the first offender? We came out and found some gentleman, older gentleman, who should obviously know better, out in the stream, found the flat rock. He's sitting in a lawn chair he obviously brought with him, sipping vodka out of a glass. So no, I don't want to put it on the kids. Adults can be just as, sometimes worse than, and so, yeah, I don't want to make it sound like I'm just talking about families and kids. Because again, those two boys that were flailing away at the sculpture were doing it with their mother standing there and watching them. So in my opinion, that's not really the boy's fault. The mom should be teaching them that you don't do those kinds of things. Yes, through the design school. They've done a number of different things. One of the most fun ones they did is they did a fashion show where everything that they made in their apparel had to be made from natural materials. And they collected from the gardens. The fashion school loves us. In fact, they hold it's a major show. The school is apparently very well known. There will be fashion designers from around the country that will come to their fashion show. They were not going to be able to have it last year because of COVID. They came to us. They said, is there a way we can use the gardens? It was phenomenal. They took the walks. They created all these wonderful arches. And so all of these people that had come out of town and everything, I thought it made a great venue, and they were able to hold that. But yeah, it's a group that really participates with us a lot because they're always looking for that creativity. And I think in fashion right now, there's a lot of the connection to nature and things of that nature. Yeah, the question is when we're giving, and actually all they have to do is present their SNAP card. The library is a checkout, and then the football tickets. I'll address SNAP and first. Those people are extremely appreciative. So they're coming in already with an appreciation. So their whole attitude is not about damaging or anything of that nature. However, we don't get damage from football because during tailgating and the game, if they're using us, it's because we have the best restrooms in the area, and otherwise they're using porta-johns. So it's pretty much front desk to restroom to back out again. But where we found it is of value to people is trying to get out of there after the game is over is horrific. So we found a large number of people will then come, use their ticket, wander the gardens, and then come back and leave. And again, they're coming in, they're not the ones who got drunk during the game. So they're coming in with that appreciation again, that they have that space to enjoy before they leave. Now, we also have one little bonus that happens during football games, and that is that our DPS, our Department of Public Safety, they use our building for intake for all of those people. So it's really interesting to go into work on one of those Saturdays and walk down the hallway that they're operating in and see students crying, saying, oh my God, you can't tell mom. And, yeah. So our staff feels very, very safe because DPS is actually working right in the building.
So students can get in free with their IDs. Does that mean that somewhere in their tuition fees?
Yep, that's all on us. We actually don't get any student association fees. A lot of groups on campus do. We get nothing out of those fees that they pay. It is on us. We say you're coming in for free. So it's at no cost to the students. Also, when we do things like orientation week, we'll provide every student with tickets for themselves and their parents. Or, well, they don't need the tickets, but we'll provide tickets for the parents. We'll do things like that during homecoming. So that will never be any cost that goes back to the students. $11 for adults, and then it goes down, and for age groups, seniors have a discount, things of. Then they buy a membership.
What's that membership?
It depends. What is the cost of the membership? It depends. You can start with a single. We have a duo. We have family. I think the single right now is $55. So I don't think that's an exorbitant amount to pay in a year's time if you want to come every single day. We do actually have one gentleman. He's retired from the vet school. He is there every day, 7 days a week. He walks the gardens. That's his his health. So I'm sure, well, and he pays a lot more for a membership because he appreciates that and he's supporting the gardens. But most definitely, that's why, that's why we promote the memberships, because if you're going to come any number of times, then once you disperse that out over time, it's very low cost. I think we're running on and on, aren't we? I appreciate the questions, some well thought out questions there. So I hope I answered them well for you.